We begin this episode seeing the ancient Lannister army march their way to the Golden Tooth, which is the gateway to the Riverlands. I must say, it was awesome hearing the Reigns of Castamere again. We see Jason Lannister speak with Lord Humphrey Lefford to discuss their plans to invade the Riverlands. Lord Lefford tells him he has over 500 soldiers ready to join him. Jason asks Lord Lefford to send a raven to his brother and tell him they'll only march into the Riverlands with Aemond and Vhagar. Next, we see Aemond in a small council meeting, furious about Jason's request to be escorted to the Riverlands. He expresses to the council, "Who is he to make such a request of me?" Larys informs him the blockade of the ports is still a problem. Aemond suggests the Greens form an alliance with the Triarchy to dismantle the blockade. His small council disapproves of this idea. Aemond quickly moves on and declares he wants to take Harrenhal from Daemon. Sir Criston tells him that taking Harrenhal would not be an easy feat. Aemond tells him, "My uncle is a challenge I welcome." The meeting ends, but Aemond asks his mother Alicent to stay behind. He tells her she's no longer needed on the council. With the look of confusion on her face, she begins to protest this suggestion by running down her resume as if that was going to get him to see her value. He interrupts her and says she should go back to domestic pursuits, which will be more suitable for her. Alicent walks up to him, grabs his chin while he's looking up to her, stares deep into his eyes and says, "Have the indignities of your childhood not been sufficiently avenged?" The way the actress delivered this line just gave me life. It really just hit me in all the right places. Alicent clearly hit a nerve because Aemond just simply got up and walked out of the room in silence. We cut to Corlys in Rhaenyra's small council room. Rhaenyra walks in and he simply greets her, "Your Grace." She explains to her small council that she can't depend on Daemon and that she's in this alone. She further explains she needs to utilize the dragons. It needs to find riders for them. She stands up and tells her head Queensguard knight, Sir Darklyn, that he has Targaryen blood through his great-grandmother. She assures him she's checked the records and he may be able to claim a dragon. He's honored by her request and kneels before her. She warns him that attempting to claim a dragon means one must also be prepared to die. Suddenly we see Daemon having another vision in this haunted-ass castle. He dreams about the argument in the throne room he and his brother Viserys had when Viserys lost both his wife and his stillborn son. Witnessing his brother cry from the hurt Daemon caused him, Daemon runs to the door and tries to escape, but his attempt appears to be pointless. He clearly has an issue with dealing with emotional situations. Sir Simon Strong opens the door and snaps him out of the vision. Daemon confronts him with a blade to his throat and asks him, "What type of head games are you playing?" He also asks if he has been putting something in his food. Sir Simon declares he hasn't done anything. Daemon walks away from him. Next, we see Daemon leaving the cursed castle, thank God. We see Caraxes waiting for him, and it looks like he's ready to go as well. Alice Rivers stops him by asking him if he wasn't going to say goodbye. She confronts him about his behavior and running away from uncomfortable situations. He yells, "Don't lecture me!" She continues to speak and tells him that his anger blinds him. He humbly asks her to counsel him on the men of the Riverlands. She looks at him with an intrigued look on her face and says, "The Daemon Targaryen is asking for help?" She explains the law of the land to him and tells him, "Do nothing now. In 2 days' time, the winds will shift." Rhaenyra, Sir Darklyn, and the Dragon Keepers meet in the pits of Dragonstone at the mounting station. The Dragon Keepers begin to sing the same ancient Valyrian song we saw Daemon singing to Vermithal last season. I'm not sure if they specifically somehow summoned Sea Smoke, or if he was just the first to approach the mounting station. He emerges from the darkness, and the Dragon Keepers begin to tell him to obey in High Valyrian. Sir Darkly begins to approach Sea Smoke as he lowered his neck and upper body so Sir Darkling could mount him. The Dragon Keepers tell Sir Darkling, "No fear," as he slowly makes his way towards the saddle. He turns around and tells Rhaenyra, "I've done it." Suddenly, it appears as if Sea Smoke changed his mind and blew fire at Sir Darklyn and the nearby Dragon Keepers. Rhaenyra looks horrified and Jacaerys removes her from the mounting station. Sea Smoke cooks them real good and walks away after expressing his disapproval of Sir Darklyn trying to ride by killing him with dragon fire. Next, we see Corlys speaking with his illegitimate son, Alan Hull, at the docks of Driftmark. He tells him he wants him to lead his ships. Alan is hesitant to accept the promotion, but he eventually agrees. We see Adam at a distance, clearly listening to their conversation, continues to work, but has a look of disapproval on his face. We cut to seeing one of our dragon seeds, off-white, in one of the pubs. He overhears a few sex workers complaining about the royals having feasts and balls while the rest of them starve. It's clear these women are working with Mysaria to spread the smear campaign of the Greens. One of Rhaenyra's council members follows her through the halls of Dragonstone and begins to tell Rhaenyra how he disapproves of her recent decision to try and find dragon riders and that it's a bad idea. She turns around, clearly irritated by his presence, and slaps the taste out of his mouth. She looks at him and says, "It was my fault you have forgotten to fear me." Lord Celtigar stares at her in silence while holding the side of his face. Rhaenyra totally touched his spirit with that smack. Mysaria enters the room and tells her it was worth the risk, no matter the outcome. She informs her that people are going hungry and the smear campaign is in full effect. Rhaenyra accepts the update and picks up a sword. Mysaria tells her it suits her and leaves the room. Suddenly, we see the small folk trying to purchase food from a vendor, and he's clearly running out of supplies. They see a royal carriage pass by that's transporting sheep. You hear a few small folk say, "You're feeding your dragons while the rest of us starve." I don't know what's wrong with Team Green, but their PR isn't looking too good right now. Isn't there a back gate to King's Landing? Why do they parade the sheep to the Red Keep in front of starving subjects? Otto would have never allowed this. We cut to Aemon meeting with the small council. Larys explains to him the citizens are getting restless and hungry. Aemon responds, "It's Rhaenyra who's doing this. Why are they mad at us?" Larys tells him during rough times it's natural for people to look to those in power for help. Aemon mentions he'll need a hand while Sir Criston is away. Sneaky Larys overplayed his hand by suggesting he would be up for the task. Aemon laughs and tells him to fetch his grandfather Otto because his loyalty to his family has never been questioned. It seems like many know that Larys killed his brother and father. The resident maester walks in and tells Aemon that Aegon is recovering. Aemon puts on a fake smile and tells him thanks for the good news. Next we see Aemon enter Aegon's living quarters. He slowly approaches him and asks him, "What do you remember?" Like a predator, he slowly approaches him and pressed a ball on his wound. The resident maester walks in. Aemon walks away from Aegon and tells the maester his brother will need a slow recovery and walks out the room. Suddenly we see Rhaena walking with Joffrey in the Vale. They stumble upon a dead, charred sheep laying in the middle of a patch of burnt grass. We see her in her living quarters with Rhaenyra's small children playing with toys and the small dragon, Stormcloud. Lady Arryn enters the room and tells Rhaena the Prince of Pentos will host the Menessos. Rhaena confronts her about the obvious large dragon in the Vale stealing sheep. Lady Arryn tells her the maester said it's just flying around looking for food. She leaves the room. Alan and Adam converse about confronting Corlys about their standing with him. Alan is shaving his head to hide that new growth of platinum blonde follicles and suggests they continue to keep working and not disrupt their lives. Adam suggests they branch off and find their own riches instead of working for Corlys. We see Rhaenyra on a balcony of Dragonstone contemplating on what she's trying to achieve. Jacaerys walks towards her and gently asks her about the incident with Lord Celtigar earlier. She expresses her frustration with being cooped up at Dragonstone with a council that barely listens to her and a non-existent land army. Jacaerys gently reminds her of all the alliances they've secured. Mysaria appears and tells her, "My queen, our gift is sent." Jacaerys asks, "What gift?" Rhaenyra tells Mysaria, "Let us hope for clouds over the black water tonight." Jacaerys looks at both of them and quietly leaves. Next thing you know, we see some small folk by the seashore. One gentleman looks to the left and notices a small boat with a Team Black banner approaching the shore. He walks over and discovers it's filled with food and other goods. The camera then pans outward and we see several small boats approaching the shores of King's Landing. Mysaria is so effective. The small folk are going to be done with Team Green after this. We cut to Alicent sitting with Aegon, and she asks the maester, "I thought you said he improved." The maester tells her he sleeps every 9 of 10 hours. Alicent begins to ask about her letter she sent to her father, Otto. The resident maester tells her Otto hasn't responded. He then steps forward with a look of discomfort on his face and informs her that houses are warring in the Reach, which is the hometown of the High Towers and many other noble houses. We see her enter the courtyard. She looks at Sir Kristen as he prepares to leave for battle. Sir Gawain calls out to her. She approaches him and begins some small talk, but asks him about her son Darren. He tells her that he's 16 years old now, smart, cunning, and kind. She looks pleased by the news and begins to question her own motherhood because how Aegon and Aemond turned out. Her brother tells her perhaps the pressure of growing up in the Red Keep has something to do with how one turns out, and he's sure she tried her best. Her brother is being so kind to her in this moment. He says goodbye as he mounts his horse. Alicent and Sir Kristen look at each other in silence. He then turns around and leaves. I think this little love affair is over. Next, we see her walk in Helena's room. Helena is intensely watching her bugs, and she tells Alicent, this one stopped singing. Alicent tells Helena we should light a candle for Aegon and the other lost souls. We now see the Smallfolk running in the streets of King's Landing, spreading the word that Rhaenyra has been sending food. We see our dragon seed, Hugh Hammer, snatch a head of lettuce from a random citizen. The people begin to riot in the streets. The Queen's Guard enters the chapel and tells Alicent they must leave immediately. As they try to make their way back to the royal carriage, the Smallfolk throw food at Alicent and Helena and begin to ambush them. One man grabs Alicent and loses a limb because of it. Alicent tells her Queen's Guard to arm themselves with their swords. She witnesses one of her guards get overwhelmed and repeatedly stabbed by a group of Smallfolk. Alicent and Helena continue to run until they eventually reach their carriage. They quickly get in and catch their breaths and can hear a few Smallfolk cheer for Queen Rhaenyra. Mysaria totally executed this plan perfectly. The Smallfolk appear to be officially against the Greens. Aemond definitely dropped the ball, not taking this matter of the Smallfolk seriously. We cut to Aegon laying in his bed and a nurse getting ready to give him a dose of some medicine. Suddenly we see sneaky Larys to leave and to hold off on giving him the medicine. He tells him too much of the medicine will cloud his mind. Larys walks over to Aegon and begins to tell him he survived Dragonfire but will never be the same. He tells him that people will look at him with pity and will most likely laugh or talk behind his back when he's not present. He continues to tell him that people will underestimate him, but his mind will be his strength. I appreciate Larys trying to teach Aegon how to maneuver differently in this game, but I also know this is to his own benefit because Aemond made it clear that he doesn't trust him. We get back to Daemon still having visions at Harrenhal. He sees his brother Viserys crying over his wife Emma's body. He approaches him and begins to comfort him in his time of need, which is something he wasn't able to do while he was alive. Sir Simon wakes him up and informs him that the Lord Tully has passed away and his grandson has now taken charge. I guess this means Daemon will now have the Tully soldiers on his side. Sir Simon Strong walks away and Daemon begins to cry. Daemon appears to be dealing with a lot of regret for his actions in the past. This haunted castle appears to be forcing Daemon to deal with his demons and do some deep soul searching. Next, we see Adam on the beach. Suddenly, he and other individuals on the beach see smoke in the air. They begin to scream and run away from the dragon. We focus on Adam, and he runs towards the woods. Adam looks up and sees smoke above him. Smoke is clearly chasing after Adam. Adam trips over a log and falls. He stops to catch his breath and looks for smoke, but the dragon is nowhere to be found. Suddenly, smoke lands in front of Adam, moves in closely, and begins to smell him. I think Adam smells like his half-brother Laenor, and that's why smoke is drawn to him. Also, the Velaryons have been intermarrying with the Targaryens for many generations at this point. So Adam most definitely has some Targaryen blood running through his veins. Mysaria updates Rhaenyra on the progress of their campaign. She informs her that people have turned against the Greens. Rhaenyra is still feeling a bit insecure and brings up that she doesn't have a land army and she fears she may have turned Daemon against her. Mysaria reminds her she has the Velaryon fleet, many other allies, and lastly, her. Mysaria reveals the story behind her scars, and it is quite heartbreaking. She continues to speak and tells Rhaenyra the experience taught her that the world is cruel and that she shouldn't willingly trust just anyone. She also expresses to Rhaenyra that she believes she's earnest and sees her as an equal. Seemingly touched by her story, Rhaenyra turns around and gives Mysaria a hug. While both ladies are embracing each other, Rhaenyra begins to breathe heavily and kisses Mysaria. For some reason, I wasn't surprised by this, but I think both of these women feel like they truly understand each other at the core. One of her queen's guards rushes into the room and alerts her that Sea Smoke appears to have a rider. Rhaenyra and Mysaria look at each other. Mysaria simply says, "The Greens." Rhaenyra rushes to Mount Syrax and begins to fly away to find Sea Smoke and his mysterious new rider. The episode fades to black. This episode was definitely better than last week's episode. It also moved the story forward, but seemed to be a bit more eventful than episode 5. I feel like we got to see Daemon and Alicent self-reflect and may possibly start to change the way they interact with the people surrounding them, and also think and move differently throughout this conflict. The cameo from Paddy Considine was good. I love the character of Viserys, so I'm glad the actor came back to haunt Daemon. We got to see the Smallfolk begin to riot against the Greens, and see the beginning of Rhaenyra finding her dragon seeds. I'm excited to continue this story next week. Overall, I rate this episode a strong B. If you like this review, please like, comment, share, and subscribe.